Oh. Well, I
We're
want to ask you a quick. Oh, we're now live.
we're now live. Yeah.
Okay. Are we recording also?
Um, I haven't set it to record, but it would automatically record on YouTube at least. I have it set to record
Oh,
on that.
okay. So now we have a performative moment for 7 minutes before schedule. This is like off cuts. This is the type of thing that they would cut off, isn't it?
This is the thing where people are welcomed in. Just so you know, Anastasia, we're live on
Yeah, okay.
on
Cool.
the
The interwebs.
on the yeah.
Okay. Hi,
So
people on the interwebs.
I can see how many
I'm
people
not
are watching on Restream.
nobody, I
And
reckon.
my
Hello, Anastasia.
Just a few.
Привет.
to the interweb
Как дела?
I'm not involved.
Andrew's saying Privyet and Cocktail.
Привет, привет, Andrew.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you're Kara Shaw.
Crash
Mm.
How's Andrew?
He's good.
Good.
Me?
Yeah, I'm just assuming you're good.
I'm okay. Yeah.
Mm.
I've just been out for a cycle to the shops
You're a psychopath.
and stocked up my. I always try to fill up my rucksack,
I'm just gonna work
and it can be more or less
while
expensive
I'm
Mm-hmm.
depending on
trying to
things.
sleep.
Mm.
Mm. Lead is heavier than gold.
But it's
Oh, I can see you now.
Can you see
I
it?
see you up on my feed.
Nice. Okay,
Yeah.
we're up on her feed.
Hi. I'm gonna.
hi.
How they put
Great.
Mukan.
So
Mukan.
So
no,
remember not to pick your nose.
Yeah.
well, uh, it could be worse.
Mm.
It could be worse. I
And,
mean,
and eat it.
what's for sure is that if we go to YouTube, then that is an. I mean, we could. Why don't we list through all the different platforms we're streaming to at the moment, just for the benefit of people who are
Oh yeah, we're streaming.
crazy enough to log in 5 minutes before.
Okay, yeah. We're now currently streaming on Twitch, which is redirected to the Pixelache homepage. It's embedded on on the front page of the Pixelache homepage. We are streaming to Periscope. We are streaming to both our public Pixelache Helsinki Facebook page and our Pixelaking group for our community. Um, we are streaming to YouTube, and that's it. There isn't much other ones, but that's a lot. I think that's six.
That's all, folks.
Mm.
That's like almost omnipresence, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
For
Yeah.
one hour of my life is getting recorded across a collection of corporate servers, mostly in California,
Yeah, mostly. Yeah. Or like, or some in
or at
Frankfurt.
least the master copy, I
Mm.
suppose at least, and uh, not so much details given away in my window, I guess, because I'm doing my big shoulder technique and the dark background and the light
Mm-hmm.
in the face, things like that.
Yeah, you better
But
lit.
you've got a great collection of swords in the background,
Yeah,
I have to say.
yeah. Thank you.
And so for that side of things, everyone's going like, oh, he's got some big swords. I wouldn't mess with him.
Yeah, well, I'm prepared
That's
for
the
the
type of record.
apocalypse. Are you?
That's the type of record you want
Mm-hmm.
actually on servers, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
remember
well,
that Steve Maher?
if I'm gonna get targeted advertising based off video capture or whatever, I want it to be sword based if possible. So.
I don't blame you because
Mm.
after all, I mean, for the humanist apocalypse, the one which is at least human centered and not necessarily drone centered,
Mm-hmm.
you want to have the weapon, right? At least to ward off, to scare people off. I mean, we know you're not a violent person.
No,
We know you're not interested in actually chopping limbs or anything.
no, not
That's
not
totally not what you're
necessarily. No,
interested in.
but I mean, it's like learning any martial art. Like learning historical European martial arts. It's
Yeah,
a martial practice. It's about discipline and that kind of thing. Even though I've not been to classes in over a year, over 2 years.
yeah,
Yeah, but yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
also,
Discipline and
none of these
training.
swords are appropriate for any of the like sword training I have
We don't know what
done.
your sword is.
Yeah,
Well, I was gonna say that's the only reason you have this on is because you think
but
swords
I
are
think
cool.
that are
I mean, they're decorative. they're an appreciation of a cultural heritage that mostly doesn't exist anymore, but
Yeah, they're
reminds
record.
you of harder, bloodier time.
Exactly.
Yeah. In fact, it reminds us that the statistics for violent crime is really low in our decade,
Maybe not in Limerick, but
or historically
and
low,
maybe not in Glasgow.
and maybe not. But actually, even in Glasgow, it's fine.
Yeah.
I know that even in places like Glasgow and Central Scotland, the
Yeah.
crime figures are actually not that bad.
I remember visiting Glasgow. I think it was the week that they had taken Limerick's title for murder capital of Europe.
Mm.
And I just remember thinking, this is nice. I can't believe that this is the murder
But this was
capital.
probably the 90s, wasn't it?
Limerick, well, it was like late noughties, actually. Like mid to late noughties.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. From, I
Oh,
think
yeah. Well, that's when things started.
2005 was the first time I visited Glasgow.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, the mid 2000s were an improvement because they brought in a very good program for taking knives off people and an amnesty.
Oh yeah.
And because there's not really guns or anything like that like in London, but there was a lot of knives on the streets, and they made an amnesty so that people could just hand them in without getting into trouble, and that took a lot of weapons off the street.
I can imagine.
A lot of tubes, as in things to club people, and a lot of blades and things like that. So it worked really well. And then the other side of it was that the young people were given more attention and given direct, not counselling necessarily, but tackling gang culture in a way which was human and social.
Yeah.
Right?
I have to restart Zoom, or my connection to Zoom. I'll be back.
Okay, I'm gonna make my tea. Okay.
You'll still be on the stream, I think.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
And we're back.
That's the tea today.
Nice. What is it?
Ginger sencha. I'm just using up my teas in the name of cultural production. You know that?
Yeah. I'm just writing a header on our stream saying the tea today.
I'm hoping by the midsummer that someone will be kind enough to get me a real teapot.
You don't have one? Oh, is that?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah. You can't hear me though, obviously.
Yeah, I can't hear you though, Steve. Your mic.
Funnily though, our audience would have been able to hear all of my responses to what you were saying.
Yeah.
Because the audio from my mic is going through a separate line. So.
All right.
Yeah.
You know how I have a nice tea cozy? Have you seen my tea cozy? I'll show you. It's a fabulous tea cozy.
Oh, that's cool. Peacock.
It comes from Pakistan, Kashmir. And it was a souvenir to myself for the trip to Pakistan in October.
That's gorgeous,
yeah, and I got it from a very nice sort of craft design shop. There was one of the events that we had some social gathering, and I was just like, I need that one. The problem is there's no teapot, right? So I'm hoping that the right teapot will come around at some point, and then the person who works in the shop became a Facebook friend.
Oh, nice.
And then I was like, oh yeah, I can't remember where it came up, but anyway, I ended up showing it to this person, and it's like, oh, that's beautiful. That looks like it comes from Kashmir. And it's like, yeah, I actually bought it in your shop. You don't remember? Oh right, yeah, of course. And they said, "Would you like a teapot?" So I could make you a teapot. I was like, "Yeah, I just don't know how it's going to happen." I can. I do that type of thing when I go and visit. That's my home area.
All right.
I can get one made. Type of initiative.
Sorry
And
about
I just hope that's okay. I suppose I hope that teapot thing might happen one day. So if you're listening to this, dear friend in Lahore, I'm still interested. I use a measuring jug as a temporary measure until this fantastic clay Kashmiri teapot comes to town, or makes it in one piece to Helsinki, because I think that's the bigger trick.
Yep.
You know. Yeah. So that's that. So now I have tea.
You'd be interested to know. You see that big sword right in the center of all of them up on the wall. That one.
The big sword. Yeah.
That's made in Pakistan actually by a company called
Really?
Deepika. Yeah, they're like kind of a good source for very cheap but very big swords.
Let's say very skilled blacksmiths there. Let's say that.
There is, yeah, but actually Deepika themselves they used to make weaponry. They used to make ballistics weaponry like rifles, and then in the
Yeah.
late 90s they started making swords for international markets, and they became one of these kind of
Okay.
yeah. But it's based off a gallo glass sword, so it's actually Scottish mercenaries that were operating in Ireland. Yeah,
The Galagas. Yeah.
it's a nice cultural mixing going on with it as an item.
Totally. Totally, and I'm quite sure those blacksmiths in Pakistan that they probably really appreciate that heritage, because that heritage is very similar to some of their own, but just in another continent or another cultural context. Because the relationship to the empire was quite the same.
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
the Gallagher, I didn't know much about them until recently. It was only last year that I think a conversation with you actually brought it up.
Yeah.
And I did a little bit of Wikipedia research, and I was like, oh, that's very interesting.
It's where a lot of pre-plantation of Ulster, like Scottish surnames, originate in Ireland. So a lot of them, the Mac patronymic comes from families that descended from, Galloglass mercenaries. So and then they ended up having a lot of land holdings in Donegal. So this is where most of them settled down.
Yeah. Well, I suppose that's a reward for fighting other people's battles, isn't it? You get a bit of land, a bit of house, a bit of land, a bit of lake, maybe a wee bit river.
Yeah, that's it.
You know, and
I can't check these comments for some reason. I'm trying to.
We don't have anyone else turn up yet, which is good for us.
We have Vishnu and Egle saying something, but the app on my phone won't let me see what they're saying. Could you check?
Vishnu is saying that, Egle is saying that she can't hear you very well.
Okay, I can fix that.
It's on her computer.
Is that? But I'm fine. Is that right?
I've just put up the audio level. I just didn't want to break anyone's speakers either.
Vishnu is saying for her as well.
Okay, but there's 8 other comments. Apparently, it's saying. I just can't switch between windows because of the setup I have. If I switch.
Vishnu said that's a lot, which was a comment to how many people or how many channels.
Okay.
Channels.
Yeah.
Well, at least that's what I understood of it.
Have you ever heard of the term a stream bomb?
A stream bomb, no.
No, me neither.
Just
But
to
that's
say to
essentially what
Vishnu
we're.
and Eglate that they can join us if they want also. The link
Oh,
is
well, they
on.
can, but they can lurk in the background. It doesn't matter. If they know it's live and recorded and streaming to, and this is why I use the word stream bomb. We're stream bombing all the platforms at once, like some sort of blitzkrieg. Then not everyone wants to join that, right? If they knew it's just in one platform, oh, it's going to go to
Well,
I don't
we
know,
wouldn't
our
have an
front
audience
page.
either, I suppose, if we did ask them to join.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, but imagine that we're like, okay, we're just going to stream to our front page. Well, the number of people who look at our front page is
Vishnu
pretty
says
small.
she's trying to join.
And
I'll
then
send her
if we,
the meeting ID. Oh,
yeah,
I'm gonna lose the video now because I clicked away. But anyway.
yeah. But anyone who's interested in Pixelache today, because yesterday we released our open call for Festival 2021, then they might go to our page and go, oh, what's going on? Or they might even do a little search into one of these platforms that you're streaming to now. And I wonder what they've done online. I wonder what they've done on, I don't know, YouTube.
Yeah.
Is there a video of their previous work?
And there'll be a lot of 2016 stuff actually that they can check out too, because that's when I think the YouTube channel was like last used properly or intensively. I was looking through all of this stuff.
Well, that's the thing through cultural production that we don't think about too much. Although it's obvious for us because we've been, as an older member, I know, and I've even made a list of all the platforms we've used over time.
Geriatric member.
Old age pensioner member. A veteran or whatever. Then like, you know that, oh yeah, we left traces here, and there, and I don't even remember the login for that one, and you know, oh that member, yeah, we don't talk to them at the moment, yeah, or I haven't heard from them for ages, or no, I need to contact that. Right, and we've gone through many cycles of this, so now this is where the stream bomb comes in. Now we just do it all at once for an hour.
Yeah.
And leave quite a heavy footprint, arguably, on a servers somewhere, and like it's. I mean, you know that I'm interested in archaeology and archaeological thinking, so I always try to see the metaphor and the comparisons of our digital agency in digital spaces and online spaces as things that leave marks and leave behind debris in the same way that the material world does. And of course, it's no longer an argument to say that the digital world is materialist as well, because it is. And of course, every time we do anything online, we leave a digital trace which has a materialist angle to it, interpretation to it, and whether that be CO2 emission or whether it be a notch somewhere in silicon or whatever, right? Of course, I'm just using metaphors at the moment, but the point is that we can't escape the fact that even our most ephemeral actions, like a conversation remotely between each other in a video platform that arguably might not exist in 3 years, still leaves a trace somewhere, even if we can't.
One of them might exist.
Yeah, of course. I think I know which one.
Yeah.
But that'll be ours, right? No, but the at least YouTube is going to be the one which is obviously, because of the number of people who use it, is obviously still going to be around, right?
In some shape or
form. And is obviously.
Yeah. Although, you know, I mean, we can look at other, like, equally successful, like, per capita, let's say, like, in terms of how many web users were around, there were many other platforms that disappeared over the course of, like, 2 years or 3 years even, because, you know, the web moves that quickly, you know, like, and if we look at how ubiquitous YouTube is today, but, like, how, like, I mean, I suppose, like, this last 10 years, it has had this prominence, you know, but there was a period when no one was using YouTube, you know, like when people were
course.
first discovering it, you know, early YouTube stuff.
Yeah, I know.
And there was like a hotbed for performance art and like all sorts of great stuff. That's all been like taken down now.
Yeah. I mean, I a few weeks ago, if it wasn't even last week, I remembered about this Van Gogh TV, which was one of the first sort of multinational, multi-sided streaming event that took place, and it used digital cable, and it came out of one of the Rhine cities of Germany. I think it was Frankfurt, but there was collaborators all over. Actually, it was part of Documentus. It was in Kassel.
Okay.
And it was in 1992, right? So it was very early and pioneering, and it was mostly ad hoc. It was a project where a lot of people self-organized and students were involved and things like that. So it was really like experimental, but they had a very high-end media broadcasting setup. So they basically had a cable TV station at Kassel as part of Documenta.
Nice.
And people were live, and they used all the technologies they could at the time, right? And I came across the other week a research project, and this is from Frankfurt, which actually tried to deal with the archive and the history of that project, because it was very significant. It was very important for many people at the time to explore a sort of live audiovisual streaming environment, as it was at that time through cable, and in an experimental avant-garde way. Like, there was no rules. People made up rules. People made up platforms. People had to invent schedules to stream non-stop for, I don't know, 2 weeks or something, right?
I think
so
I've
it was
heard of this project, I think.
it's extraordinary. No, it was called
something
Piazza.
TV, right? Or
Van Gogh TV was the collective, and the project name was called Piazza Virtuale.
Yeah, I think I remember sitting down at a lecture about it when I was in college. Yeah.
I first learned about it in art school in '93 or something.
Yeah.
Right. So one of my early
I think I only heard about it when I was doing my MA. So, you know.
But it was pioneering, right? And now, how many years is that later? Almost 30 years later, they are researchers are going like, oh, we need to really understand what happened there, because that was extraordinary. We need to interview the people who were involved. Actually, one of the persons who came to Finland because of the Pixelache collaboration with Circulatia 2 and Co-Elsie, a guy called Stefan Döpner, he was one of the persons involved in that project. So he was one of the students studying in Bremen at the time, involved in it. And he's been posting in Facebook his archival materials. That's really interesting too, because maybe that stuff that he shared hadn't been seen before. You know, and when I watched the video interviews with some of the founders of the project, of course they're mostly guys in their late 50s, early 60s, a few women as well. It's like amazing, right? Because they're like, yeah, we did this and that, and it was crazy, all these issues of censorship, and people were just spamming and video bombing, basically. They were calling up the telephone, and they were broadcasting porn. It was just everything that as people are complaining about now with Zoom, they were doing with cable.
Right.
Essentially, it was an open platform that was streaming live, right? And all those concerns about how do you deal with that? It was rebroadcast through a cable TV channel, so they had to take responsibility for illegal content, all this type of thing, right?
Yeah, and I think like if they showed anything illegal, they would have been subject to a lot of hi Vishnu. Like, I mean, at the time with broadcast laws, like, you faced huge fines if you said anything that was on like the censored list, right? I think today it's a lot more relaxed, but yeah. That's
right. But they had to come up with strategies for broadcast and audiovisual content live without any rules. what happens when things cross into the legal context? It becomes problematic. And how do you deal with that?
Vishnu, you have a lot of experience with streaming. Like, it's been a big part of your practice, like even before all of this sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
And welcome, by the way.
Thank you. Hey, Andrew. You have a question for me?
Oh, just if you wanted to talk about your like streaming knowledge, like why was it such an important thing for you in what you do?
Yeah. So I started for like the EAP. My reason for it was to like think about surveillance and how we conduct ourselves in front of cameras. And then like if it's a surveillance camera, we have a different attitude versus like, you know, this is something that is seemingly consensual, but like, is this surveyed? That was like the first starting point. And then also like to think about the gaze aspect of it, like how am I going back to the same thing of like conduct. How do I perform when I'm thinking I'm seen, but then how easily I become numb to being seen, you know, because I was live for like 42 hours nonstop, even when I was sleeping. A lot of my audience were on Instagram and TikTok, and it was hilarious. Like, I have so many comments on TikTok, but like people were like, she's just sleeping. Why are we watching this? Did she move? Is she dead? Stuff like this.
Yeah.
Vishnu, just for clarification for people who might be watching this after the live situation or sometime later, can you explain a little bit about that work? Because I think you're referring to something that happened recently.
Yeah, part of our program even, eh? Yeah. The Exhausted Activist Project.
Yes. So this is a name that I have borrowed from like two different artists. One is Fanny Souza and the other is Siri, whose academic or like graduation work it is. And to me, it felt like very pertinent to like borrow this title. And yeah, so this is almost the first time I'm acknowledging the work or like the title, because I'm super inspired by it, and I have been inspired by it somehow like fits into this burn very well for me, because it's something that we don't think about, like how tired activists are. And it's something that I experience myself, like I'm just tired to the point that I'm not available anymore in my personal life, because I'm just constantly thinking about the situation in India, like topics around structures and feminism and like many things around. This particular one that I proposed for our platform was just like taking naps, you know, or like how does rest manifest, or like what is the space of rest, and can rest be an act of resistance? And and especially in our times of this hyper productivity where like you really have to look busy, you have to show how much you're working and how your work is then going to like bring in more resources. And so like, but we don't think of rest as something that is actually bringing us health, actually giving us like mental health and peace of mind both at the same time, because like you really just dislodge and disengage from something, take a nap, and then maybe you can come back to it. So
sorry to interrupt. You've been doing nap cafes for a while, haven't you? It wasn't just recently. Maybe you can say a bit more about that, because
thank you. I really enjoy talking about my nap cafes. It's now 2020, no? It's 5 years old, my nap cafe experimentation. And in the beginning, it was just a thought around how, the thought came when I was in an airport and I was looking around and thinking like, wow. When I first moved to the West, like a lot of CH, like the chairs were very conducive to like people sleeping, you know. But then that particular travel, it occurred to me, I was going to India and I was going via Munich. Chairs were like somehow made sure the chairs were made to not rest. So a lot of people were just doing this. And then I had like a interesting this leg kick moment a la Inception where like I just woke up because, you know, it's really not comfortable to sleep there. And that's basically how the nap cafe happened. Like, what the fuck? I should like just open up the space where people could nap. But then that it's very, I'm dramatizing it more than maybe in retrospect, it was quite dramatic. So I actually like put out my jacket, put my luggage close to me on the ground, and I took a nap there. And just half an hour later, I see like mother with her kid coming and napping just next to me. And like it became like a spot where we were napping, and I thought, my God, this is needed. Like it's so important to have this. And then I did it in a more elaborate way at Asematila as part of their Asemalabra project. And that was amazing as well, because I somehow thought like nobody's coming here to take a nap because this place is just out of nowhere.
Actually, I should say for other people that Asematila is actually in a former railway station building in a suburb of Helsinki. So it's no longer used as a railway station, but it used to be. So it's a wooden building right next to the train station.
Yeah. And I have like one of the pictures from Asematila for our proposal when I proposed it to for the Exhausted Activist project, because I somehow, I was overwhelmed with the number of people coming in, like really asking, so I have to pay something? Is this really free? And I was like, yeah, you take a nap. For that, you pay me nothing. You just, just come and take a nap. Yeah.
When you mentioned about this, the street furniture or the benches that exist in a sort of public space, sometimes they're private spaces, but most often they're public spaces. And you mentioned that how some cultures, those things are managed more than other places. Street furniture, as in benches, have been purposefully adapted so that people cannot sleep on, right? It's well known, and in some places like the UK, for example, that's happened, where bumps are put on them or dividers are made so that you can't lie down, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you want to speak something about the control that's implicit in these things and the ability to sleep actually in public or semi-public.
What I always found interesting about Finland in that dynamic is that you often have in public spaces, or there must be a very recent thing around the center, but you have like you have public chairs that are just for one person. You know, have you ever seen that? And usually they're facing away from another chair.
Yeah.
Which is weird. Like they're like really uncommunal. They're really just to like be there for someone to sit down to have a rest for themselves and then to move on, you know, and like not to inhabit for any duration of time or anything like that. It's really
Mm.
interesting. I was thinking about like when you were talking, Vishnu, about like have you ever heard of surveillance? Have you ever heard that word before?
Say the word again. Surveillance.
Surveillance. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong.
Surveillance. Yeah, like yeah. Actually, I just came across it 2 days ago because I'm researching a lot on like CZ Dazzle, and there is an artist work that I'm currently following, and I came to her work because of my like ecosexual. Sorry.
One sec.
No. Can you can still hear me, no?
Yeah.
So I came across her work because of now I feel like it's important to somehow give you reference to her name, and I'm going to like look because I'm not very good with retaining names.
I'm terrible at that. Don't worry.
Thank you.
I can. If you don't remember now, I can tell you an anecdote from something related while you remember or look up.
Okay, cool.
So I was.
This was sorry. Yeah, you do. You go, Andrew. Okay. Then I'll look her name, and then it will be complete when I'm summing it up.
Now we deep dive back into the past, back into Pixelache past. 2004. I was one of a few people who organized a workshop in the Central Railway Station in Helsinki. It was with Sophia Lerner, who was doing a workshop, a sound and public space, and I was doing a located media workshop. So in 2004, we both made separate workshops, one a bit longer than the other, but during Pixelache Festival and presented in Pixelache Festival at the end, this was one of the bigger events of 2004. So one of our participants, an American who was at the time based in Sweden, still is actually, Alison Gerber. She was very much interested in the overlaps between art and he's become a well-known academic actually in those overlaps. But in that located media workshop, because we had a lot of people who were exploring the control systems and the different management systems in the Central Railway Station of Helsinki, and she decided to do a performance where she would pretend to fall asleep and see how long it would take before the security guards came and nudged her up, right? So she did these measurements of time. She measured the time it would take before they came and go, right, you move along, can't do that here. And it was like 3 minutes or something, right? It was nothing. So that was interesting because it reminded you that actually you're not allowed to relax in that space. You can't even pretend. I mean, there's not obviously a place to lie down.
Yeah.
Of course, if you go to the railway station late at night, people sit on the ground and things like that because nothing's open and they're waiting for the last trains. And, you know, there's a small period of time where weird things happen, right? Mostly in the last hour. But like in the daytime, you can't even close your eyes for any length of time. It's really
actually that's something very striking to me in pub scenes in Helsinki versus Hyderabad, my city. Like in Hyderabad, if someone is falling asleep, the security guard is coming and making sure that they are kind of safe. So they put like a little tape, you know, to protect them from, because like it's something, it's possible that, and like because of how common violating someone's physical spaces in context of my city and at large in India, even in this time, that it's like really an act of courage, like to fall asleep like that. And that's why Blank Noise, really important platform in India that does a lot of work they organize like public sleeping in public spaces as a demonstration to like not forget the big gang rape that happened, if you remember this case of the bus rape.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That's
going
the
back,
incident that sparked so much civil protest, right?
yeah. But I was talking about, so I do not know how to say her name correctly. Hito Steyerl, Steyerl. And she made this work in 2013 called How Not to Be Seen, a fucking didactic educational video. And it's amazing because I have come across her work because I am researching on like what is Vandana Shiva talking about, like ecofeminism, and why is she constantly as an extension of my previous work, which is called Plants Are Queens. And I was like just making it started off like this just little dialogue of like, fuck, you're asking for it, plant, because you don't have the same defense things that Amazon trees, like some of the Amazon trees, you can't touch them because they have like this protective area around them that they're constantly like.
Oh yeah, we were talking about that yesterday, right?
Yes. Yeah. And therefore, I came across her work, and that's where I heard surveillance.
I hope that Regis turns up again. He popped up. He connected last week. He is actually in tropical Brazil, so he might be able to give us another angle on it.
That would be nice to hear about.
Let's see. He managed a little bit last week. The connection was not great, but
okay.
Well, yeah, just for people who don't know what surveillance is, because I'm doing we're looking at the Cordeline application because they have this digital leap open call at the moment, and Pixelache isn't eligible to apply as an association. So in my free time, whatever that means, I've been trying to convert a project that I did before, like 2 years ago in Rua Red in Ireland, called Insecurity Cameras. It was part of the Glitch Festival 2 years ago that Norani Murku had me over to do back then. But so like in preparing for that, I was researching a bit about surveillance. But there's a really interesting artist. I think she's from Leeds originally. Anastasia will know. Ange Taggart. Anastasia's worked with her a lot in the past.
And she's been to Finland quite a lot too.
She has, yeah. She was actually over for Amorph 14. Was a performance festival that Moo put on in 2014. That's how I got to know her, because me and Charlie Clark, who, here's my segue to Bunkers, is going to be in the Bunkers project next month on the 15th. She's going to be streaming her work as part of Alan Bolton's Bunkers project. We were doing a brewing project when Charlie used to be based here in Helsinki as part of Amorph. But surveillance though, I think is like super interesting because I like the idea of like turning the focus back on the lens, and it gets super complicated in this post.
Is the name of the artist, or I don't know if the person who coined it is Steve Mann?
Yeah, Steve Mann. Yeah. He's really interesting
about.
Yeah, because he's actually a big part of this body modification scene, or was like an early pioneer in terms of like he did that project where basically he had he was recording and broadcasting everything that he was doing with like a massive backpack mobile setup and a camera mounted onto his head, and like has done many iterations of that project. But then the surveillance stuff is like and then also there's Mac valence, and there's actually a graph, and I have it here, we can look at it. I'll bring it up. Like only the audience will see it, so you might have to check where our stream is going out. But there's the graph kind of defines what we know as surveillance on the x-axis, and counter to surveillance is anti-surveillance, which is things that are set up to disrupt surveillance. And then kind of on a separate branch to surveillance is sousveillance, which is where the focus is actually turned back on the viewer, even though it's not technically possible because you're looking through a lens, and the lens doesn't allow us to see who's looking at us, but we can in some way kind of interrupt this idea that we are watched and that we don't look back, and that's what sousveillance is. And then I can't remember what Mac valence is, but it's kind of it's somewhere between surveillance and then anti-sousveillance, and which is disruption of sousveillance, but then it's revalence, but then I think it's when it has a corporate aspect to it. And then there's univalence, which I forgot what that means. And then there's just valence, which is somewhere in between, obviously, sousveillance and surveillance.
Yeah, I wonder like if counterveillance is referring to what is like the all the activism work that is happening around surveillance. But really, like, that to me, how this is also like coming under the, like how tiring it is, and therefore #burn. That there is
finished. Sorry.
No problem. No, I just lost the thought because I was looking at it, and now I have to like trace back my thought. But if you have any other thoughts, I'm curious.
I can maybe follow on, because, and especially when you talk about the exhaustion, right?
Yeah.
How many conversations have you had in the last few weeks of people saying, "Oh my God, I'm so done in," because we're spending so much of our social interactions in the way that we are doing it now, right? So the communication forms that we have are not giving you back energy in the same way as you're used to in presence, right? And also and a lot of this is probably subconscious. You're having to do all the interpretive reading of the other's response and your communication and your dialogue and your conversation through mostly the visual cues, right? So you're actually focusing intensely much more. I have a friend at the moment who is normally teaching, an art teacher, who's at the moment getting to paint all day because obviously they're not going to school and teaching, and there's not a responsibility at the moment to do high school teaching remotely. So this friend is getting to spend all day in the studio painting, because that's actually one of the things that they really like doing. And they've forgotten how exhausting it is to paint all day, right? Because it's obviously exhausting to be with teenagers all day in school, right? But to be on your own all day with your easel and your attention directed to canvas and to the painting you're doing all like for a whole day, you think, I forgot how exhausting that is. And it's about attention, isn't it, right? It's about putting your attention focused to something for a period of time that you're not normally doing. And at the moment, even just for our short hour, we are having to put all of our attention to a small screen and using
Yeah.
mostly visual cues and of course some audio cues, but nothing else. So our sensory exchange is narrowed down in the same way as maybe this friend who's painting now instead of kids, right? And I wonder if the exhaustion that we have, because all our communications is through a screen, obviously this is tiring anyway, but because actually you're just focusing your attention in a different way than normally, and you're not getting the non-audio visual cues and energies back.
Yeah.
This is also exhausting, right? Depleting.
It is really, really exhausting. I came upon the term in an academic paper on the sixth wall.
Sixth wall.
Yes.
Wow.
Oh no. Are we on the seventh yet as well? Or is that some sort of...
That'll be like the 2029 festival, breaking the sixth wall.
Yeah.
Sorry, please no, tell us.
But like according to the Urban Dictionary, it's talking about acknowledgement, but I just read like it's really well written here, so it puts it in a context as well. When multiple famous YouTubers acknowledge each other's existence. Aaron, have you watched Ethan's new video, Dan?
Oh, that's a Game Grumps reference.
Ah, okay. But it's also like acknowledging or like bringing in another person's on-screen work.
Yeah. It's really common practice because, and I think a lot of YouTube personalities do it in order to gain like algorithmically what exposure their videos get. You know. Yeah.
But so what would you say? Is it dear robot? What would you say? It's a drone. What would you like? Do you think that it's a common progression? Because like to me, I did not know like what is a first wall was, and the second wall, and the third wall, and then the fourth and the fifth wall. And now coming to like this space of sixth wall, to me, like there is a huge dimension of like infiltrating feminism into technology, because acknowledgement is a huge aspect of like non-competitive work. And but now I'm just I don't know, like there is not much material to it, but I'm like really curious to like see if this is the natural progression, and like if
yeah, I have a bit of a take on it, like
I'm curious to hear.
Yeah, I mean, when we were first talking about fifth wall, like of course fourth wall, like is one of these tropified terms that's used in like reference to meta narrative, like breaking this idea of a wall between the audience and the the narrative that's been created on the stage, and then that was adopted for cinema and television, and that barrier, that wall was the screen, and then in terms of like stage like craft, the fifth wall was often referred to as the cinema, or as the ceiling. So this was like the fifth boundary. Anastasia's breaking fourth wall there. So, but like, I mean, I think when we were talking, we weren't thinking about a ceiling. We were thinking about all of these clumsy metaphors. We were thinking about this idea of like an external boundary beyond the fourth wall that is like ephemeral and transient and not so easily defined. So for me, like, but of course, the more that term is used, the fifth wall, it's a one-upping of a fourth wall. It becomes inevitably less ephemeral because it becomes more defined. So for me, like a sixth wall is that tinge of a bit more ephemeral, more blurred, where media and reality are even more dissolved, or dissolved in a way that's like metaphysical, even, like, you know, that's beyond like our, you know, like, I don't know, it makes me think of like kind of like things like that Alan Moore does, where he mixes like writing and storytelling with the idea of it being a type of like of amancy, of a type of magic, you know, like a sixth wall it feels to me like that kind of border space, you know, like border boundary or something.
Yeah.
Like a membrane, another membrane. Yeah. So I think like yeah, I know. I was just going to say something that I couldn't qualify anyway. So.
well, I actually just wanted to back you up, because for those who are watching this and wondering where did these terms come from, they're not just off the top of the head. It was also the theme of the 2019 festival last year that Steve, who's hiding behind Pixelache name there, and Vishnu there were two of the co-directors. So YouTube stars are quoting each other to boost their algorithmic ratings so they can be viewed more. Right? It reminded me, and also because Vishnu, you had mentioned that, like, it's an academic reference also. It just reminded me a little bit of academia, right? And the sort of bubble, arguably an intellectual bubble scenario of referencing each other to boost up your profile.
Yeah.
So is it just an audio visual citation pyramid?
So that's basically why I went to Urban Dictionary to see like what are people there saying, and it makes like a very and then what Steve was adding, like, to me it made like total sense on like when I make a point, I kind of like pick up only the things that that make my point stronger. Therefore, like, I'm going. It's a conversation around like bubbles and how to break that, and like how to come out of this sixth wall, because fifth wall is perceived as like the common internets, yeah, like the grand screen of all the screens, but like sixth wall is what you're carefully curating, and yeah, it has like this algorithm, and then it's also having like a lot of I mean, there is an aspect of like critical view on it, because it's self-promoting, but then like there is not much like, for example, when I'm Googling what is sixth wall, I'm not getting nothing much.
If you typed in the nth wall, you know, like,
yeah,
you use n instead of any number.
Like tortoises all the way down, isn't it? You know,
yeah.
I think the more and more that because we need to like kind of define these things, but of course, and we have the opportunity to do that ad infinitum, because we have an infinite amount of numbers that follow fifth wall, sixth wall, seventh wall, eighth wall, ninth wall, you know, so there is a plurality of meanings that can happen, which is super nice. I think also, you know, when we were trying to do research about fifth wall, there was some outlier academic stuff, but I think one reason we were really drawn to it was because we had the opportunity to define it through the festival and what we were doing, which was nice, you know.
Did you ever do a reflective essay together?
Yeah, I think
recorded
I would
conversation or something like that.
No, I mean, it would be great though.
Yeah, I really
It
would
would be
think
great.
like it would be really amazing because I think how we also like took like, on one side of the card is like breaking the fifth wall, the critical aspect of like the internet, but we also like somehow juxtaposed with community building. So there is also the view that, like, for example, right now we are benefiting from the fifth wall and together as a community. So I see that we already exploded during that time. And to me, it was like very relevant, even though like it, I mean, when I look back on it now, of course, I can make sense of it in retrospect. But back then it felt like, is this even making sense? And
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I offer some comment. I mean, at the time, I think I will at least speak for myself. I don't know what anyone else thought, but I was very curious. What is that? What are you exploring? And through that theme, of course, you wrote a text which explored it together as the four of you, because there was two others, Alan and Sasha. I
And
just use
Sasha.
for now.
Yeah.
And of course, I know you worked on it together, and it became a conceptual thing that motivated you towards making a festival and inviting people to explore different aspects of it. Going into the festival was always like, so what's this all about? I don't know. And I suppose it would have been, in retrospect, also, it would be unfair for you to know also until you had the experience of seeing the works, commissioning the effect of the works are, having time to think about it after the post-production moment when everything's settled down again. And now that we're not yet a year later, but almost, it might be good to return to it and say, well, what did we learn from them? We invited these artists, we did this work, these things happened. How did those things contribute to our understanding of what that fuzzy term was? The breaking the fifth wall.
Yeah.
Because that was in some way exploring a concept together, using the festival format as the medium of exploration. But I would encourage you all, that's the four of you, directors of
thank you, Steve.
Pixelache 2019 festival, to think, okay, maybe we should reflect on how did our work even explore those subjects or that concept. So that for our association and also for the public who attended it, and hopefully those who are interested in curatorial sides of things and also, of course, cultural studies, could go, that's what it meant to them, or that's what they learned from it. Because the reporting that our association does on our work is mostly like a reproduction of, well, this is what it's very rare.
It's not critical, the function of it isn't critical. It's just a kind of an account.
Yeah.
And even like this,
exactly.
the photo diaries that I'm putting together now, they have no actual critical bite. But then, that's partially because we haven't had a conversation about what the four of us felt about it and what we felt as an association. For me, though, I think like with the community building, side of it, like, I mean, this was breaking the fifth wall, like as a title, and community building as like this attaché, to it. Like it like this was the breaking was like the present verb, like the outcome was TBC, and the opportunity within the festival was to offer a platform to a multitude of voices which respond to this idea of a networked, like, membrane that separates us from the mediums that we interact with and the art that we interact with, and how that is like interfered with. Is it technologically driven, or is it more of a kind of a cathartic and physical like experience.
Mm.
You know, yeah.
Yeah, socially, the festival was great. I think, and the work that was made for the festival was great.
Mm.
I'm curious. What did we learn? Did you break the fifth wall?
No,
It's not about break. It's no longer breaking.
I don't think.
Did you break the fifth wall?
I don't think we broke the fifth
Or is
wall any more than if in breaking a fourth wall, it's still contained within a meta narrative, so it becomes part of how something is written. So in breaking a fifth wall, we're still part of a network society. So we don't necessarily break out. We don't necessarily elevate ourselves beyond it. You know.
Well, now that we're in even wildly different
Vishnu's
circumstances.
battery died.
Oh, that's a shame. We're going to close anyway in a few minutes, so it's okay. I will, recognizing that we're still recording this, maybe you can say a few words again why you think it's important that we do actually experiment in broadcasting these conversations and their other work in the way that we do now.
Me, say.
Yeah, because you're the one who set up.
Yeah, well, today was like functionally a test, but I also think like for me as well, I want us to have more of a presence. So I want this like restreaming to be like a continuing practice if we can, because there's the opportunity to bring these conversations out to people, but also I'm astutely aware that probably there aren't a lot of people listening, but it's there no matter what they feel about it. It's coming up in their newsfeed and it interrupts in that way and creates a presence for us as an association and as a developing festival that is valuable, you know. And also I want to have a lot of practice with this infrastructure because it's going to become a very important part of how we carry out this year, and I want it to be here after this event that we're all experiencing in the world is here, so that it's something that we can integrate into our normal activity and that we can make use of it, because you know we're all you know past 20, you know, and for us like you know it's we have to kind of adapt to how media is being communicated. And I remember you were talking about Billie Eilish last week on her Instagram live feed and stuff like that. And like this sort of thing is exactly what we have to be doing to be like just that little bit relevant as a association that calls itself Pixelache, you know, like we have to be on that pulse, you know.
I think it's good for us to pay attention to those things. We'll never compete with Billie Eilish.
Well, not with
There's
that
no
attitude.
Never. I mean, there are people who are ultra famous, right? And our scene has always been small,
sure,
and arguably marginal, but it's been intimate. And one of its values is it's been a not only a community of interest of people gathering together because they're interested in the same type of subjects or explorations. It's been communities in plural of practice, right? So there's been different people who do stuff coming together and showing off their things too. And that's always been small. And of course, in the Nordic context, it's anyway much smaller than other European or North American city contexts. But anyway, Pixelache Festival has always been exploring emerging media and technological frameworks, more or less. I mean, you could argue that at the moment we are forced to use streaming technologies, and as you have the restream, so we can broadcast to 6 platforms at once. As I said earlier, this stream bombing. That's a tool that we can use because some of our events will be rather
some are compatible with that like paradigm,
exactly.
I'd say, yeah, but others aren't. Yeah, and we have the opportunity for both. But
that's right.
Yeah.
And we also get to practice what it means for us to be in a conversational mode that other people can catch up with later, right? So So we're also exposing ourselves in practice
Yeah, but
with shared interests
to me, it doesn't
as
hurt
it's
to
going
be
along.
ambitious, and it doesn't hurt to want what we do, which I acknowledge is like very special. That
Mhm.
we can have that for a lot of people, and that like is a positive like impact. I think culturally, you know, and also, you know, I just want, you know, I just want my money. I want my dollar bills. You know, like.
Well,
Yeah,
one thing, just go back to the Billie Eilish example, and for those who never saw it, she basically, I mean, Billie Eilish is wildly popular with young people, and she's also got mainstream success from a wide age group. But last week I tuned into her live stream on Instagram, where at the time I joined, 250,000 people were watching at the same time, right? 50,000. And she was presenting herself in a very intimate, close-up way. So it was the screen was close to the face. You felt like you were almost like next to her, right? And she was randomly connecting to her fans, the ones who were mostly the ones who were following her on Instagram. And we just pick one at random because when you joined the live stream, it said, "Do you want to join the call?" Like request to join the call, which at that scale it's massive, right? But typically a live stream would be a smaller number that you join in, and your video camera is open access, right? Basically, the calls merge, and so what she was doing is she was just picking at random fans and becoming in a video call one-on-one, right? Of course, everyone, 250,000 people were watching as well, but they got direct, individual, personal attention from their superstar, you know, and pretty much it brought tears to your eyes. It certainly moistened mine, because that direct connection with your idol for these, because the couple of people I watched in connection were young teenage girls, and they were just like, "Wow, this is amazing! You out of so many people, it's me." And I'm talking directly to Billie Eilish, my idol.
It's brilliant.
It was amazing, you know, and it was super sweet. And she was just saying, "I love you. You're great. I love you." This type of thing, right? And of course, the fan is saying the same thing back. And you were like, "That is amazing. That's effect." And you could argue that through that sort of transgression to the one-on-one, out of that 250,000 that were watching at the same time, she broke that fifth wall. No doubt about it. You know. So I found that amazing, and that's the type of thing that we have to keep in mind, that we don't have any idea what effect you have and what you do online, but there is a chance that you can totally affirm or validate someone's interests or practice or things that they love, you know.
Yeah, that's a good note to end things on, I think.
I think so too. We're a little over time, and it's probably good to get back to our non-public broadcasted lives.
Yeah, which has been broadcasted.
But I'll see you next week.
Despite my best intentions. Yeah, I'll see you next week on the stream.
The Pixelache 2021 festival just opened up their call. You can look for it on festival.pixelache.
Sounds really good.
Yeah, that's how we look. See you later, Steve.
Yeah,
bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Bye.